we've been going through each of the principles. We're on principle 3 this week. And the new wording, as put out by Unity Village of the principle, is human beings create their experience by the activity of their thinking. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginnings in thought. I like that wording, that it's the beginnings in thought. It's not just the thought itself, right? So I want to try to explain that a little bit. Because sometimes it's like, well, if we're not thinking the right things, then that's when everything goes wrong, and that's a false perception. Are you can't hear me? Oh, okay. I thought maybe that was speak into the microphone more.
I'm thinking the beginning of thought was vibration.
Exactly, which is
and vibration
right.
And from then on, you create more.
Right, and we're actually going to talk about vibration today, so that's perfect. That's a perfect, that it is all vibration, that thoughts themselves, take form through our belief system and our perceptions, and it's not just a thought, because think about our thoughts. There's like a bazillion things happening in our brains at any given second, right? And it's not all of those things don't turn into something. If that was the case, we'd be living in the middle of a cartoon, or Harry Potter land, where things would just pop every time we, had a stray thought go through our head. Actually, I want to share with you, there's a story in the 5 Principles book called Choosing Our Truth. And there's a quote that says, it's not enough to understand the spiritual teachings and that all of this stuff about thought, that's not enough. We must live that truth we know, which we talk about all the time. That story, that quote's from page 53. I actually jumped ahead of it a little bit from the principles of that to find that quote, but it's still in there. It's the idea that it's our perceptions on our truth, right? Because we all know that our truth is subject to our perceptions. What we know now, much like what I just told you about the Will Wheaton book, that he redid it, many years later and said, what I understand now as through my life experiences and my reflection and my healing, so our thoughts change, right? Through time. And sometimes not, we can still have that stray thought run through. But again, it's not that magical stuff. It's the association with our emotions and feelings that create that vibration, right? And then it's not just that, it's like how we act on that, right? So it's not just thoughts out there in the ethers, right? But it's the feelings around the thoughts, what becomes our perception of truth, our own special paradigm of love and lack and loss and fear and joy and separation. How are we feeling about those things? And then how do we actually do that? How do we do that? So, and when you think about that, how many people have guilt because of a stray thought they had, and then they think maybe something correlates with that stray thought? Like, I wish somebody would just leave me alone. And the next thing you know, they're moving across the country and you don't have them in your life as much anymore. Those kind of thoughts are not what creates those actions. I think we need to put them in perspective of what really, really happens. Or we have a ton of people walking around in guilt because they think that their stray thoughts created this calamity in their life somehow. Wayne Dyer is a really cool example of this because he taught through his entire life. Now he's passed about 5 years now, but he was one that really taught about your thoughts and your feelings and that laws of attraction and how to move with that in your life and using affirmations and embodying those. And I remember when he passed, there was all this backlash from people on his public pages because he passed. And it caused his daughter to actually be very public and say, he totally lived his life the way that he was teaching, right? Just because somebody dies doesn't mean they weren't doing it right. Because that's what happens in humanity. There's a cycle of life here, and sometimes, and people pass, they die. It doesn't mean that anybody did anything wrong, right? It doesn't mean that the thoughts weren't there and that his teachings weren't sound, that he wasn't practicing everything that he was trying to embody in everybody else. I found that really, really interesting, that there was this backlash because of death, that maybe he wasn't doing even what he asked others to do. So I wanted to just put that out there and think about that. How much do we get tied up in, our thoughts are the vehicle for manifestation, that then we don't remember that it's not just a stray thought. That's why I really like that the new wording says it has its beginning in thought. That's where it starts. And then how does our intuition feel into that? Which part of our intuition are being highlights of thought, right? Which part are we paying attention to? Which part of us is activated and or triggered by different thoughts that come up in our space, in our awareness? And then what do we do with those? Do we allow our thoughts to nourish us, or do we become fearful and then we become malnourished because of them? It's almost like the old, the superhero phrase, with great power comes great responsibility. We have great power. This is how we're using it responsibly. What thoughts are we holding into, and what thoughts are we giving time to? So I want to jump into what Carol said at the beginning about everything being waves. And some of this comes from the work that Greg Braden did in the book Divine Matrix, where he breaks down the science for us about how the universe is in the waves. And then couple that with what we know from the Heart Math Institute, with how the heart actually brings it all together and spreads that out. So whatever we believe, right? Whatever part of those beliefs, they turn into feelings. But what are those to begin with? So if we take the equation that beliefs equal thoughts plus emotions, right? If our beliefs are thoughts plus emotions, and emotions can run the gamut from fear on one side to unconditional love on the other. And then where are we at in that line on whatever thought we're having? So thoughts plus emotions equals belief. And in that book, Divine Matrix, Greg Braden reminds us that the atom looks like a bunch of energy. So when we actually look at the atom, the smallest particle in our world here, in our universe, one of the smallest, it's made up of other smaller. But when we look at that, it looks like energy. It looks like, when you turn the lights off with one of those globes with all the electric coming off of it, like you touch it and it sparks your electric through the hand. It looks kind of like that, but with all the sparks coming out. And we know that the change of an atom relies on the change of the energy that it's in. So depending on how much energy and what type of energy is around the atom, it changes, right? It combines with other atoms depending on the energy involved. It separates from other atoms depending on the energy that's there. And there are two types of big energy that scientists look at when they're studying this. And one is magnetic energy and one is electronic energy. And they can see how the smallest particles in our world move when those things are changed. So all that's good. We know that. So a change in the electric field or the change in the magnetic field says that there's a change in the atom. Something happens. And we know that the atoms create everything around us. Our heart has both electric and magnetic fields, much larger than the brain. Much. They can measure this. It's the electric field, something like 100 times more in the heart than what it is in the brain. So we think about that. If atoms are changed because of changes in the electric field and changes in the magnetic field, and we have a heart that radiates that, then it's our heart-centeredness based on these thoughts that start to change the world around us, or to change the push of the way. And now we still have to add our actions to it. We still have to make choice for actions, but that energy is there, right in our own hearts. So when we pair our thoughts with that belief and that emotion, that's when, and we practiced this before, where we align our hearts with our mind, right? So if we come up with an image in our heads on what we want, what we feel, what we believe, is possible in the world, like peace, right? Like cooperation, like empathy, and we have an image of what that is. And then with that image, we feel that, right? That's the clicker. We place the thought with the feeling, with the emotion, and they can actually measure the change that happens from the human heart out into the world, which is why all those experiments with people that learn, they teach people how to sit with the feelings of peace, and then they take them out to a place that is not very peaceful, and they have everybody sit in that, and what they find is the emergency calls go down, the robberies go down, all of these things that are really measurable when people are sitting with those kind of intentions. The electrical field really works. Those waves really work. The clicker is, at least from my perspective, is in what actions do we take on that? Because it's great to say that we're aligning that, and we're feeling that, and we're thinking that. But then are we acting on it? So the thoughts are the beginning. They're not the whole thing. We could sit all day long in our living room, feel the feelings and think the thoughts and have all the energy going out, right? But when it comes time, are we saying the words? Are we doing the actions? Because in the end, the prayer is the action. The prayer is the action. And it can be the little things that we don't think about, like picking up a piece of paper off the road so that somebody on their bike doesn't slip on it, going by, or even just the litter aspect of it. Are we doing the tiny things in our actions? The tiny things add up to that wave, because the more we do the thing that we believe in, the bigger the wave gets. Because somebody else then starts to see that and recognize that. And then they can feel those feelings and be with those beliefs. And it doesn't matter which one it is. You could be in the fear range or the unconditional love range, and it's still going to work, and it's still going to radiate. Right? Which I think we see more than enough of playing out in our world right now with the different extremes. Right? But it's not just the feeling of it, it's how we acting on that. And I saw some of this. So I just told you guys that I got to meet Will Wheaton yesterday because I took my kids to the Comic-Con. But I also watched people interact depending on what was happening with them with masking or not masking in a very crowded public place. And what I recognized was complete just acceptance of whatever anybody else was doing. And some of the presenters that had made public that, oh, maybe I'm doing something with some kind of autoimmune at home or whatever, people didn't even blink. They just grabbed masks, whether they were wearing them or not, and put it on to be a part of that thing. And then if they didn't need to when they left, they took it off when they left. And I'm watching this, I'm like, isn't that, it's compassion and cooperation and acceptance running on just a simple, tiny, nobody even said anything, but you could feel just the respect, I guess, for what anybody was at in the whole place. And the place was super crowded, but depending on where you were at and when, and there wasn't even any signs, it's like people just knew, right? It was lovely to just see that kind of respect in a very, very, you know, a place like that, especially after all this back and forth, you know. So again, and it's that thought with the action and with the feeling, right? And it's even going one step further in living your truth. Doesn't mean bashing somebody else's truth. Does that make sense? And that's what I saw being played out. It was like the respect of somebody else's truth in full force there. So how do we live our truth? How do we take time to explore which truth we are expressing, both individually and personally and with others? You know, and is compassion a part of that? And compassion is one of those emotions that we can expel, you know, we can express from our hearts that creates that wave, that creates the change, or creates the world in which we personally are living in. So if we work with the affirmation in all circumstances, we are willing to embrace and embody the most loving choice and declare that as our truth. If you take a breath and just close your eyes and feel how these words may hit you. That love is the foundation of our truth. And when we choose to see or seek that presence of love, those circumstances that arise are felt and changed through our truth. And may our truth draw more deeply on love's infinite inner wellspring. May our thoughts align with the emotions and the feelings of that truth. Taking belief and making it possibilities. For in that realm of creation, in the realm of that divine matrix, all possibilities are present. All possibilities are present, and it's in our thoughts plus our emotions that bring those into focus and become manifest. And may our every thought, our word, and action radiate that love and that compassion and our desire for what is possible in this world. All the peace and the love and the compassion. And as we breathe, we recognize that our beliefs, our thoughts, plus our emotions, our beliefs become our feelings. And our feelings become the possibilities that we are able to see and manifest. And so it is.